Hello and welcome to the EV Pulse, your weekly EV news update from us at the EV Geek podcast. We are your hosts, Joel and Sebastian. In this week's episode, we will be talking about Kia's EV3 sales in Korea, Volvo's software update, Lucid Go's NACS, plus news from Rivian and Stellantis. Thank you for joining us as we check in on the pulse of EV news. Once again, thank you all for joining us on our second EV Pulse episode. Today is Sunday, September 15th. We are here to get you caught up on the EV news stories that came out this week that you might have missed. Sebastian, why don't you get us started off with news from Kia?
Yeah, so first little bit of news doesn't actually come from the US, but I still found it interesting. The Kia EV3 accounted for 10% of Kia's sales in South Korea last month. This is the first full month the EV3 has been on sale in South Korea. And it accounted for 10% of their total volume for the month. They sold 4,000 EV3s out of the 40,000 total cars for the month of, I believe it was July. So I thought that was pretty sweet, Now, here in the US, we're still waiting to know when can we have it, because I feel like it should do pretty well in the US market. But, I think there's waiting on some, are they going to build it in Mexico? Are they going to build it, in the US? Are they just going to ship it from Korea? I don't think they've really solidified that plan yet.
So yeah, this is cool news. I mean, Kia has been making news a lot lately. I know we've been talking about Kia a lot with sales and everything like that. But this is pretty cool news. Not hearing it from their own home country. And like you said, I'm interested to when this vehicle is going to come out here in the U.S. They have the new plant in Georgia that they could build it in. They could build it in Mexico. They could ship it overseas. If they ship it overseas, it's probably not going to qualify for the tax credit. So it would make sense to build it, in Mexico or in North America. So it does qualify for that tax credit. But yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait to see this car. It's going to be relatively cheap, probably, mid to high 30s. It's going to be cool to see these on the road. Next up, we have news from Volvo that has announced plans to update software of 2.5 million cars with new features. So with the launch of the new EX9 and EX30, their flagship EVs, and refreshed XC90, Volvo is also launching a new design for their infotainment system, both with a fresher look and moving to a new version of Android Automotive. Volvo has announced that they plan to also push out this update to cars built since 2020 that use the older Android Automotive interface. This is cool because it's kind of a rare instance to where you see a legacy automaker actually trying to work to bring the latest and greatest features to their existing vehicle. We see this a lot in Rivian. We see this a lot in Lucid. We see this a lot in Tesla. Not a lot from the legacy automakers. You kind of get what you get when you buy a car with software, and that's it. You can update the navigation map and things like that, but that's about it. Instead of just saying, hey, buy a new car if you want the new stuff, which sometimes is not always the best thing to do. Volvo claims that this has been planned for a long time, and it's part of the reason they have moved away from physical buttons for radios and climate control. Volvo states it's easier to program a system for multiple vehicles when you don't have to worry about different buttons. I have actually never thought of it like that. I just didn't think they like buttons. I didn't realize that makes it easier to program stuff. But actually, when you think about it, it does make sense, Sebastian.
So yeah, that was super cool to me. Just kind of reading on, I was like, huh. Never considered it. And I mean, I work in the tech space, but it just never crossed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just think, even if it's kind of ultimately maybe a minor update, just the fact that they're kind of going that far back in their catalog of vehicles that are going to get it, I think it's just cool. There's so many legacy automakers. I can't remember who it was, but one in an interview kind of was when someone asked, oh, well, you were bringing this feature to your existing cars. And their answer was, well, we're in the business of selling new cars.
Yep.
Or there's the other hand, it was one of the luxury automakers, once again, can't remember which one, that said, well, why would we want to admit that our vehicle wasn't perfect to begin with?
Yep.
Like, what?
So yeah, I mean, we see it all the time. I mean, you can update your Android phone, your iPhone when new software comes out. It's not a big deal. I mean, that's what they want you to do. They don't want you to have, not everyone go out and buy a $1,000 iPhone every year because the software gets updated. Now, there are some perks that, even with my Tesla Model Y, I do get the latest software updates, but with the last update, there are some things that weren't available on the screen infotainment-wise that the newer 2024 versions have, which just, design-wise, which is fine with me because I got about 80%, 85% of those updates.
Yep. Moving on, Chargepoint has announced their second round of layoffs this year. So Chargepoint has laid off 15% of their workers in the second layoff, following a 12% layoff in January. This news comes after a year-over-year revenue is down 30%. Chargepoint is hopeful that recent partnerships and subscriptions will help reverse the downward trend, but we'll just have to wait to see. They're specifically calling out the LG partnership for DC fast chargers, as well as their new Omniport and some new AI stuff for charger health monitoring.
So yeah, this is, if I had a crystal ball, I could probably said about a year or two ago, I could see this happening with Chargepoint, because what a lot of people don't realize about Chargepoint, they aren't the host. They just sell the EVSE equipment. It's not like Electrify America or Tesla or EVgo, where they monitor the site. So if I have an EVgo charge station or charging supercharge station in my parking lot, if it goes down, EVgo handles it. I don't have to worry about it. I'm just giving them the space to do it. Chargepoint actually sells their units. We're very familiar with in Little Rock here at Franklin Charging. He actually bought, his two CPE, I think they are the 250s, from Chargepoint. They're his now. He's got to maintenance them. If something goes down, it's up to him to pay to get them fixed. So, and I think that's what's causing, these problems with Chargepoint. They're kind of just selling the software and the hardware, saying, we're done. It's now up to you to handle it. And not a lot of people can dish out, $250,000 for a unit, So that's kind of why I see this is going with Chargepoint. Hopefully they can turn it around. There's a lot of Chargepoint units out there, especially destination chargers that are Chargepoint units. So hopefully they can get this thing turned around.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, what might be biting them is one of the biggest things Chargepoint's known for is their commercial level 2 chargers. But like you said, people are just buying the units and putting them in the ground. And then it's a level, especially with your level 2 stations, they don't have near as much stress
system,
on them.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't have near as much stress on them or whatever. So they last kind of forever. There's not that recurring revenue stream, I feel like there needs to be more emphasis from Chargepoint on really pushing their new high power DC stations where, ultimately that's kind of where the market is right now, right? Is with NEVI funding and everything is building out, high power, high capacity EV stations. And that's kind of a market Chargepoint needs to tap into. Unfortunately, at this point, there's a lot of competition in the space now.
Yep.
And so they have to, then make themselves competitive against Autel or BTC Power or Signet or, whoever.
Chem Power. Yes, all those. So, yep.
Yep.
All right. Keeping it on the charging front here, GM and EVgo just announced that they're working together to build out 400 ultra-fast EV chargers across the U.S. So let's be clear. These are not 400 charging locations. These are actually 400 stalls. So don't think there's going to be these new 400 locations popping up everywhere. The two companies announced that these new chargers will be installed at what they're calling flagship locations, whatever that means. These locations will feature 350 kilowatt DC fast chargers. Take note of that, Chargepoint. Ample lighting, canopies, pull-through spots, and security cameras. Those are nice features. GM and EVgo said the new stations will be located near shopping areas, offering dining, coffee shops, and other amenities. And some of these locations could have up to 20 stalls.
So yeah, I actually saw right before we started on this where EVgo has tweeted X, whatever you call it, that they will be actually installing, depending on the location, CCS and NACS cables on these units.
Sweet.
Which is, cool. It's good to see that, they're kind of maybe going to be the first big operator to actually put NACS cables in the ground that isn't that's not Tesla. So it's cool to see an actual charge operator moving forward with the industry at this point. So that's, kind of neat to me. And like you said, I would have liked to have been 400 locations.
That would have been nice.
400 stalls. Because, yes. 400 stalls, it's still a good amount of chargers. But, is it a bunch of 2-stall locations or is it going to be 400 stalls and you're going to have a bunch of 8, which, I mean, we need more locations with a lot of stalls, but that's, 400 doesn't go as far when you start talking about high stall number locations. That said, from what I've seen, the 350 kilowatt units that EVgo is currently using on the Ultium kind of partnership, that they've been putting at pilots and Flying J's, seem like pretty decent units. They're Delta high power units that'll do 350 kilowatt, and they also let you simultaneous charge. So if 2 vehicles plug into the same unit, then it just splits power to 175 each, which is, 25 is still good. And that's still, I believe, above the NEVI threshold.
Yeah,
So
most of our cars on the road today are not getting, most of your Ford cars aren't getting above 175 and things like that. So yeah, that'll be fine. So question for you on this, Sebastian. You have a GM car. Do you get any discounts at these GM stations on your car when you plug in or not?
not that I know of.
Okay.
If there's supposed to be a discount, I haven't
No,
found
the
it.
reason I ask is, before when we were trying to get EVs out in the road, the thing was just give them free charging. Hey, GM's going to give you free charging at EVgo and things like that. I like this model better. I rather see GM partner with EVgo to build these together and not just offer just free charging to everyone. Because what happens is you get that Chevy Bolt, no offense, that goes and plugs into a 350 kilowatt station, doesn't need a 350 kilowatt station, and then they go into Walmart and shop for 4 hours and it just sits there, because they get free charging. So they're going to let it charge 100% and just let it sit there. So
I do believe you with the new GM EVs, I think they still give an option for doing either a level 2 home install or like a $500 or something like that in EVgo credit. But since I bought mine used, I didn't get any of that.
But that's still better than unlimited, because some of these cars are still running on unlimited. I mean, my wife was given, I think, 1,000 free miles of charging. That was 2 years ago. We haven't even used them all yet. So actually, they're going to expire at the end of the third year. So we had 3 years to use them. So.
All right. Moving on. This one is not news from this week, but I stumbled upon it this week and thought it was interesting. And you're a Tesla owner, so you might have some opinions on it. We'll see. Police departments towing Teslas. Now, that might not sound weird. Hold on. In Oakland, California, the police department has reportedly started to use Sentry footage from Teslas that are parked near crime scenes as parts of an investigation. They usually attempt to get permission from a vehicle owner for the footage. However, if they are unable to contact the vehicle owner or the vehicle owner refuses, they have had warrants issued and the vehicles towed just to get the Sentry cam footage off of them. So, as a Tesla owner, I have 2 questions. If you tow the vehicle, is there any way to get the footage off of it? Because you would have to unlock it to get in, right?
You would have to unlock it to get in. Yeah. And
so, okay.
I don't know how well. And here's another thing. You're towing a dead EV is not, something you should be doing while it's in park. It's not like a normal car. You can just bust in and put the car in neutral and good to go. You're going to drag the car towing an EV when it's parked. So I say that's no bueno. I don't think this is, I don't like this idea. I mean, a lot of times, sometimes cars don't have their Sentry modes turned on. I mean, I know if I'm parking my car for a long time at an airport or somewhere just to keep the battery life, I don't turn Sentry mode on. So but then on the other hand is, how does this differ from like a camera outside someone's business that can record the same thing too? So it is a little gray area. I probably wouldn't give up the information. I'd probably make them work for it to try to get it. But I would say not a big fan of this. Most people will probably not be a big fan of this. And when I hear about it and they say we're going to get us a subpoena, dude, what's just stop me from going home and deleting it? I mean, go in my Sentry mode and just delete it. I have a USB drive, just delete the USB drive and reformat it and things like that. So it's not a big deal. So so I don't see it working, because by the time they get a subpoena,
that's kind of my thought on it. Is like, I don't mind it if they get permission from the owner or whatever, but I feel like just deciding either if you can't find the owner or the owner says no, that you're going to go get a warrant from a judge and then have the vehicle towed. It's like, you didn't consent for your vehicle to be just because you happen to be parked near a crime doesn't mean you consented to your vehicle being used as evidence. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just weird. And it's kind of maybe a little bit of a glimpse into the future of what's coming for everything. But that's a different conversation. That's not for this podcast today.
Yeah, I'm glad you used the word warrant. For some reason, I was saying subpoena, and I have no idea why I was using that word. But the word is warrant. Yes, that is what they will need, a warrant, not a subpoena. They're not calling you to court. Don't know why I use that word. It's late. It's a long day. Guess that's right. All right, moving on. The Lucid Gravity, the new car announced from Lucid. I'm sure we're going to have an upcoming episode on this here in the next couple of weeks. We'll talk a little bit more about the Gravity. We'll get NACS. That is right. Lucid has announced that when the Gravity launches in 2025, it will come standard with a native NACS port. CEO Peter Rawlinson announced at the company's Manufacturing and Technology Day last Tuesday. Lucid states this will give Gravity owners access to those 15,000 superchargers everyone claims they get when they hop on NACS. By the way, you don't get access to all of them. There's certain ones you don't get access to, a lot, especially a lot of the V2 ones that are the lower power. It is unknown how well this vehicle will charge on superchargers, as they currently don't support high volt charging. We've talked about this with the Key and stuff. The cars only get about 50 to 100 kilowatts when you plug it in, because the superchargers don't know what to do with the high voltage batteries when it reads it. It's also unknown if Lucid will provide owners the NACS to CCS adapter like Hyundai plans to do for the 2025 Ioniq 5.
So yeah, that's just to me, it's like, that's cool. I'm happy to see another automaker doing native NACS, and it sounds like it's what the Gravity's going to launch with. So now we'll just have to see who's first, Hyundai or Lucid. But I'm just a little concerned with the, like you mentioned, high voltage cars have historically not charged well on superchargers. EGMP cars, are limited to around, I think it's 80 kilowatt, because they're using the rear motor's inverter to boost power from 400 volt to 800 volt.
Yep.
And so then the inverter is only capable of, whatever that 80 kilowatt or however much it is. And so I don't know what the Lucid inverter setup is, or if that's how it'll handle it, or if they can split the pack. I'm not sure of how they're going to handle this, because, because with the Lucid, you don't want your owner to pull into a supercharger and have a crappy charging experience.
That is true, because
it's too expensive a vehicle for that.
When you're talking EVs, Lucid is premium electric vehicles, and you don't want to pull into, like you said, you don't want to pull into a charging station only get 80 kilowatts or 100 kilowatts or 50 kilowatts. So yes,
and totally. You mentioned, the whole, you don't get every supercharger. And to me, that has kind of been the kind of thorn of this whole process, is because people that aren't EV geeks like you and me don't know, right?
Yep.
There's going to be a plug that will physically interface with the car that doesn't work.
Yeah, they're wondering why when they drive through Little Rock, why can't I charge at the Little Rock location? Well, Little Rock is a V2. It's limited to 150 kilowatts. They're not allowing people on those. Or it's the newer versions that the cars have access to. So yeah,
and it's mainly just the V2s don't communicate. They can't communicate CCS.
Yep.
Because that's all this is NACS is just CCS in a different format. The communication is still done as CCS. It's even to the point, I believe Brandon Flash tweeted a while ago that he plugged his Tesla into a supercharger, went into service mode, and saw that the supercharger was talking to his Tesla over CCS protocol.
Really?
Like, because it was a V3 whatever, the V2 superchargers don't talk CCS, and that's why they won't work currently on CCS vehicles. But yeah, it's kind of a thorn for EV adoption. I kind of feel like it's like, yay, you're getting more chargers. But if you're just going down the road, you see a Tesla supercharger there,
so
you don't know for certain you can plug into it.
Yep, you may not be able to plug into it. Yep, that is true.
Even though you can physically plug into it.
Yep, you can plug in and it goes, sorry, not going to work. So
moving on, Stellantis is investing over $406 million to retool 3 of their Michigan plants for EVs. Over half of this money is being poured into the Sterling Heights assembly plant, which is where they plan to build the Ram 1500 REV. I don't know if that's how they probably want me to say Rev. And the Ram Charger.
It's the Ram Rev, yep.
Okay. And the Ram Charger, which I believe is the plug-in hybrid version. $100 million is going to the Warren Truck Assembly Plant for production of the Wagoneer S, and they're retooling the Dundee Engine Plant to assemble battery packs. I think it's really interesting to see Stellantis kind of going full speed ahead on this, considering the other members of the Big Three are pulling back their EV plans right now.
So yeah, Stellantis, once again, thank you. Welcome to the EV world. We will have a little welcome tote for you once you release your first EV here in the United States. But yeah, it's good to see them kind of, going kind of full throttle with this. They did, and I did read a story though this week, they are delaying the release of the Wagoneer, and they said it's just not right. If it's not perfect, they don't want to release it, which I respect that. If you don't have it done yet, don't release it. If you need another 3, 4, 5, 6 months, take those 3 or 4, 5, 6 months and get it right, and don't put something out there that doesn't work. But it's great. I hope these investments keep up, and to help them build, future EV models down the road, especially some more cost-effective ones around that $30,000-$40,000 range. All right, Sebastian, what is our last news story for the day?
So our last news story is that the Rivian R1T was the only truck to be awarded a Top Safety Pick Plus for 2024. So the Top Safety Pick Plus is the IIHS's very best ranking for crash test safety. And the R1T was the only pickup truck to receive it this year. And really, if there weren't that many EVs that received it, period, the other EVs that got this honor were the Ioniq 5 and 6, the Genesis G EV, as well as the GV60, and the Tesla Model Y long range, but not the standard range. So, I mean, that's a pretty short list, though. And so the fact that the R1T was, on that, included on that list is impressive. But yeah, I don't know what's up with the long range versus standard range and why the safety would be different on the two.
And I wonder why the safety would be different on the Ioniq 5 as compared to like a Kia EV6. Maybe it's just a design
I don't know,
feature.
That was not on the list as well.
Yeah, because the EV6 has probably gonna have the exact same, safety features that the Ioniq 5 would have. Maybe it's the design that's caused it. But the stranger question is yes, why doesn't the standard range Model Y make the list?
My only guess could be, and I'm not familiar enough with the Model Y to know if this is the case, is they also test stuff like headlight performance and whatnot. And I wonder if the base Model Y maybe gets a different lighting package than the higher trim levels, or if there's just something silly like that, a kind of cost saving measure that maybe the long range Model Y has matrix headlights and then their software disabled on the standard range. I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with the vehicle.
I don't think there's less airbags or anything like that in the standard range as compared to the Tesla Model Y. But to get back to Rivian, this is exciting. I mean, Rivian has kind of been kicking butt this year too. They have the next gen coming out of the R1S, the R1T. They have the R2 coming out. I mean, the R3. So they're kicking, and it's good to see finally a truck that is an EV get awarded a top safety pick, because in general, trucks aren't that very safe vehicles to drive. I mean, they have a high turnover rate, so they flip easily. So I'm glad to see a truck on this list. So well done, Rivian. And that wraps it up for today, Sunday, September 15th. Thanks for tuning in to today's Electric Vehicle News Roundup from the EV Geek Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the EV Geek on YouTube and tap the notification icon for more detailed podcast episodes. Sorry, I can't read my own writing. We released some great episodes this week about the Nissan Leaf, Rivian's referral program, and powering your home using your EV with V2X. So head on over to our channel, check those out, plus our other podcast episodes. If you have any thoughts or questions, drop them in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Stay charged up, and we'll see you next week on the EV Pulse. So long, everyone.